For those of you who don't know or don't follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you may not have heard that I'm actually on a road trip across the country with my dog Logan right now. So I wanted to give you guys an update on why I'm doing this, where I'm going, where I've been so far, and my thoughts lately. But let's talk about the places I've already been. So we are 1 month into our road trip, and I say we because I'm staring at Logan right now as she is itching herself. And I will say Logan's doing a really good job on this road trip. She's been adapting really easily to all the different Airbnbs that we've been staying at. She's really been enjoying the extra hikes that we've been going on. I mean, back in my hometown and back in Chicago, we really didn't do any hikes. So her ability to also spend more time outside has been, I think, a very good thing for her. So where have I been so far? My very first stop on the road trip was Bluffs, Iowa, which is right outside of Omaha. I had actually been to Omaha about a month previously. And I'll be honest, I really wasn't expecting to like much about Bluffs, Iowa or Omaha. But I will say I was pleasantly surprised by Omaha specifically. Omaha has a really cute downtown area with tons of little shops, a little old town gaslight district where you've got a bunch of different really cute restaurants and coffee shops and shops. But to be completely honest, I want to get out of the Midwest. I don't want the snow anymore. I don't want the extreme heat. I just don't want to be in the Midwest. I've been in the Midwest for most of my life, other than a couple of years I spent in China. So it's like, it's time for me to try something new, right? Then I took off and I went to Denver. Now, Denver really surprised me. So like I said, most of the places that I'm going on this trip, I plan to stay 2 weeks to a month in each location, but I only put 10 days down for Denver because I really only planned on going there to see some friends. And I was shocked by how much I loved Denver. First of all, it's freaking beautiful. Every day that I was there felt like the perfect day of weather. It was like 75 and sunny, but like never hot. It got all the way up to 85 degrees and it never felt hot. Also, the access to mountains was so cool. The ability to go on these just gorgeous hikes whenever I wanted was really awesome. And also just seeing the city framed by mountains was just one of the coolest experiences. One of my favorite places that I went was City Park. And it's just this beautiful park that you get to see the downtown Denver in the distance and then you see the mountains behind it. It's just gorgeous. What I also like about Denver is it's got a great brewery scene. Breweries are one of my favorite things to do, especially after a hike. But the thing that I loved the most is everywhere I went in Denver. It was like an 8-minute drive. It was so easy to get to everything. I'm so used to being in Chicago where it's like everything you want to do is between 30 minutes to an hour away minimum. So being able to just like hop in my car and be there in less than 10 minutes was so nice. Now, what's also nice and what also probably makes me a little bit biased towards Denver is the fact that I have so many friends already there. Friends from college, friends from high school, friends who I hadn't seen in a decade that I was able to reconnect with and have a really good time with. So Denver got a lot of those extra points, but I will say something about it didn't necessarily feel like it was going to be my place. I think because in a lot of ways it still felt very urban, very like I'm living in a city, and the city still felt very similar to living in a place like Chicago, only, you know, you have a lot better weather and you have these beautiful mountains surrounding Denver. And I'm not really sure that's the vibe I'm going for. I think right now what I want most is something that's just totally and completely different from what I've been used to. So that brings us to Tucson. Guys, I am in love with Tucson. So I have been in Tucson for 2 weeks, and I will say I am getting spoiled by the most amazing Airbnb and the most amazing view. I'm currently staying in the Catalina foothills, which is basically at the north end of the city that overlooks the entire city. And the mountains are so much closer to the city than what the mountains were in relation to Denver. Like if I go out and look on my balcony, I am literally surrounded by mountains. It's unbelievably beautiful. Not only that, but the city is really integrated into the desert rather than just like bulldozing through the desert and plopping a city in place. It's gorgeous. It's like they have incorporated the city to live within the desert rather than just taking over the desert. I can't like emphasize enough just how beautiful it is here. And the cost of living is extremely low, especially when we're looking at renting and buying property. I will say there are a few downsides to Tucson. So the things that I don't like about Tucson so far is that Even though I love the fact that the city is integrated into the desert and vice versa, it makes things a lot harder and longer to get to. Here, it's like if you want to go anywhere, it's going to take at least 15 minutes to get there, if not 30 minutes. Now, that's not as bad as Chicago, where it's like 30 minutes to an hour minimum. Here, at the very least, the drive is beautiful. It's not super trafficy, but the reason that it takes so long to get everywhere is because there's no freeways here. The other downside is I really don't know a lot of people here, but at the same time, I'm pretty good at making friends, so I'm not really sure that's a true downside. I will say I never felt lonely when I was in Denver. Granted, I was only there for 10 days and I knew a ton of people. Here in Tucson, even though I have been hanging out with a couple of people, for the most part, it's been a little bit lonelier than what it was in Denver, but honestly, I just use that as a sign for me to go out there and do more. The other thing that I do really like about Tucson is the access to hiking. Guys, I have done so much hiking since arriving here, and even though it can get really, really hot on the weekends so far, if you go out really early in the morning, like if you make it to the trails by 6 or 7 a.m., generally you've got a few hours where it's in the low 70s, low 80s, and you can really enjoy the hikes. I have been taking full advantage of that. I absolutely freaking love it. So I still have about 2 more weeks here in Tucson, and honestly it makes me sad that I only have 2 more weeks here. But I'll be honest guys, I've been spending almost every evening here in Tucson on Zillow looking at potentially purchasing property. One of the major drivers of me even wanting to purchase property though is because I'd really like to have 2 dogs so that Logan has a buddy. But what's also cool about Tucson is that renting a house is pretty normal. So that might mean that I won't have to purchase a home. Instead, I'll be able to just rent a home that allows me to have as many dogs as I want. Okay, maybe probably not as many dogs as I want, but at least 2. You know the drill. If you've made it this far and you haven't hit liked and you haven't hit subscribe, be sure to do that. It helps me out a lot. And if you want to follow along on my day-to-day travels and things like that, be sure to follow me on my social media accounts here. But as always, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you guys next week.
Oh, my squishy face goddess. My squishy face goddess. Oops.